Good morning, everyone. As I mentioned, I'm Andrea Smith. I serve as the Program Director here at Northern Border Regional Commission. I have begun the recording for this meeting. Just want to make sure people know this is being recorded, and we will be posting a recording of this session on the Resources tab of our website. This morning's topic that we are covering are the requirements of you as a grantee for reimbursements, and also the reporting requirements that you have. And I'm just going to share my screen real quick to get us started. Let's see. So this, as folks know, this is the third session, I should say, that we have been conducting for our new grantees from our 2024 spring round, which is very exciting. The session from last week has been posted, and hopefully before today is out or tomorrow, the two sessions from this week will be posted. That will include both the slide deck from the session and also the recording. So you can watch it again at another time or use this as a resource as you move forward. Just a couple of housekeeping pieces beyond recording the session. We do ask, just because it's a larger group, that folks keep their microphone muted during the training. There are multiple question and answer opportunities built into today's session. So while your cameras are optional, we do ask that you keep your microphone muted until we get to the Q&A portion of our program. That said, you can certainly use the chat function if you're having any technical issues, but we would ask that your questions that you have for the staff here be done via the question and answer segment, and you can come off mute and ask your question. So we won't be using the chat or the Q&A function in Teams for questions. And then, as I mentioned, today's PowerPoint and the slide deck will be available on the resources tab of our website. Just a little overview. We will be talking about NBRC's reimbursement process. That session will be conducted by Casey Haynes, who is one of the program specialists on our staff. And then the quarterly and annual reporting requirement session will be presented by Georgia Casamatis, who is also a program specialist here. We will wrap up with some final Q&A and talk about the final two sessions that are upcoming next week. And then at the end of this slide deck, just as we have done with some of the prior sessions, there are some resources for you to have as well. And with that, I will turn it over to Casey.
Hello, everybody, and good morning. We happy to have you all here. Give me just a moment. I have to pull up our presentation as well. Give me just one sec. And actually, Andrew, if you want to pull that up, I will steal the screen back from you in a moment. But for now,
I'm happy to run slides, and you can just tell me if that's easiest. No problem.
Perfect.
There. Do you see it?
Yep. Okay. All good. Great. So this is fantastic. We've got some new updates to our policies that are going to make reimbursements a lot easier, which is really fantastic. But paired with that today is, because it is a new policy, we're still finalizing some of our guidance and supporting documents on that. So I aim to give you a little bit more of your morning back today. But we'll cover some high-level best practices in terms of keeping track of your expenses, making sure you have everything you need for your reimbursements. So with that, I'll go ahead and move us on to the next slide here. So as we talk about documenting your project costs, what do we mean by that? That's both the NBRC funded expenses and the expenses that are covered by matching sources of funding. So that's all of the project costs laid out in your budget that you've submitted. For example, as I mentioned, receipts, purchases of goods and supplies, applications for payment from contractors, all sorts of stuff. The main thing we want to talk about here is as we are looking at these expenses, we want to be able to see that it's in alignment with your approved budget, that it's within the period of time that you're requesting for. And those are the big ones. We'll have more info on kind of how to organize all of that later. But just in terms of keeping track of your files for easy reference, everyone kind of has a different way they like to organize their folders, but making sure that you're able to, at any point in the future, go back and look at all of the documents that you are, all of your expenses from each request that you've submitted is really helpful. So, as I mentioned, it includes dates, approved budget category, the funding source. You get extra credit if you go into those documents, into those receipts, you highlight the dates, make notes on the document itself, like this is NBRC funded, this is for this budget category, makes it super clear for any reviewers in the future to be able to say, yep, this is an allowable cost. This is great. Fantastic. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move us on to the next one. Now, as far as submitting your request to us, we mentioned we have a new policy that we're going to be doing and covering the desk reviews later on in these series, but we also have a new grants management system. So that's also a new process as well. There will be some guidance coming soon on our resources page that's very step by step. If you've looked at any of our other documents, it'll be pretty similar to that. But at a pretty high level, what it will entail is having a summary of the different amounts per budget category. Oh, it looks like we have a request to go full screen on our PowerPoint here. And we're working away. All right, perfect. Thank you. So you'll be asked to, for all of the expenses in a given category, list the amount. You'll end up with sort of a budget table for that request, for your request totals. It'll summarize that information for you. And then in the system, there's a built-in SF270. It's a standard form that is the request that we send to our payment processor. You'll fill out some fields on there, and you will hit the authorized official for your organization will hit submit. Again, you can't request any funds until you've gotten your notice to proceed squared away. So always good to add that caveat in there. So frequency-wise, you can submit monthly, quarterly, as needed. Definitely want to refer folks to the compliance manual. There's some additional information around cost allowability in there, some considerations for timing. But given that we're not quite there yet and don't want to give people information that they'll have to look up again anyway, figured it would just be good to keep it high level. So happy to, I recognize I was pretty broad and brief in my overview of these things. So feel free to jump in with any questions, either now or when you think of them later. You can email us.
Thanks, Casey. I probably should have started with the caveat that Casey mentioned that for today's session, because of the new grants management system that all of you worked through in submitting your pre-application and application, as Casey said, we are finalizing our reimbursement processes, which we are streamlining greatly. From those of you who may have had an award before, it will be both for our new awardees and our current grantees. as we move forward. And we do expect to have additional GMS resources available to our new grantees on both of the segments we're covering today. Hopefully in the coming weeks, things are pretty close to being finalized. Just trying to make sure we have all of our things in order. So when we open it up to all of you, it goes as smoothly as possible. And so in addition to sharing this information today, so the slide decks and the presentation, we will also be adding those additional resources onto our website. So you won't have to go hunting around for information. We do have a section of our website dedicated to GMS resources. So if you're having any struggles with making changes. I know we have asked a lot of grantees to correct or resubmit documentation. So if you're having troubles doing that, I would encourage you to look at the GMS resources we have available on our website. And if that doesn't answer your question, by all means, reach out. I think I mentioned in one of the prior sessions, or perhaps both, that in order for us to move your project to obligating money and issuing a grant agreement, which is NBRC's version of a contract, all of your application support documents need to be on file and accurate. So if you have had a request of your project to submit documentation, we strongly encourage you to do that as soon as possible. If you're having struggles, and as I said, the GMS resources aren't giving you the guidance that you need, please reach out to us via our admin@nbrc.gov address, because in talking to a couple of the program managers this morning, it looks like we only have about 20% of our Catalyst awardees who've actually responded to our requests, which is a pretty low number. Recognize we're all busy, but want to just kind of make sure people are aware that we can't move forward on your project to the next steps until we have all of those required application support documents. So with that caveat that I should have shared at the beginning, I certainly will open this up if there are some questions about what I just shared or Casey's presentation. And I would just ask you to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order in which they raise their hand. So let me just get to, so it looks like Sue, you have a question. I want to make sure I've enabled your microphone, which I believe I have. So you should be able to come off mute and ask your question.
Okay, I did receive an email yesterday regarding the award acknowledgement, the signed award acknowledgement, and the form 3881. They said that they're missing these documents from us. I guess my question to you is, where do I find them? I am understanding that the 3881 requires a financial institution to complete and sign the section 3 of the form.
Are you the authorized official for your project by chance?
I am.
Okay, so you should have received an award letter that required an acknowledgement. That would have been, so that should be attached to your record in the GMS. And Casey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we also included the SF3881, which is the kind of electronic funds transfer form that we need. My understanding is that is also located in the web, located within the GMS as a support document. If it is not, we do provide that form on the resources tab of our website. It's a fillable PDF form.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm gonna grab it, but the award acknowledgement, I'm pretty sure I already did. But I will double check right now.
Yeah, so those are really the first two things we need in order. If you haven't been asked for any other documentation, we do need those two to move to the next step for us, which is requesting an obligation of money for your project.
Okay, thank you.
The next person I see is Annette.
Hi, my question is about the reimbursement process that Casey just went over. Is there any specific requirement regarding the timing of the reimbursement of requested funds versus the match? I see that we have to include them on each request, but do they have to align in any particular way, or can they be utilized, as we do in reality?
So the main thing is that that's a great question. The main thing is that at any given point in time, we can't be the NBRC share of your total expenses up to date can't be greater than your reimbursement rate. So if your reimbursement rate is 50-50, you know, if you were to expend more match at the start, for instance, and then, catch up later with the NBRC funds to get up to that rate, that's fine. We just can't do more NBRC funds on the front end and wait for the match till the very end of the project. So that's kind of the consideration there.
Can you go over that once again? What is the reimbursement rate that you're referencing? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem at all. So when you filled out your applications, you listed your county and it sort of assigned a rate based on which county you entered. Usually that's, the 50% contribution rate or the 20% contribution rate. So that will show up on your grant agreement.
Okay, so at any time when we tally all of our reimbursements, past and the current one, wherever we're at, we have to maintain that relationship.
I would say they don't have to be equal, fully at that rate, at that sort of ratio each time. It's more can't exceed it, right?
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Looks like the next person that had a question is Leanna.
Thank you. I have a form question, actually. We had to do an update to a NEPR intake form. And when we did it back in last of April, to actually insert it to the application process, there were fields that were in that form that were locked down that we couldn't get into. Like in, are you undergoing or underway with any project with other federal funding? The section in the middle of that is blocked out and you can't get in there to fill it out. And it seems to still be blocked out and we can't modify. Do we print it out, fill in the information and upload it that way? Or is there another alternative?
Yeah, thank you for letting us know. I mean, that certainly the second option you said is fine. It's also fine if you want to just email us at our admin@nbrc.gov address with your AP number, and we can send it back to you. It was my understanding we had corrected that form, so appreciate you letting us know that you're still having difficulties. The form is on the website as well, so I don't know if you've tried that. It's in the form section of the resources. If you want to try that version versus the one that is within the GMS, that might be another option. But don't waste a lot of time. If it's easier to just email us or print it off and fill it out, either works.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Sue, did you have another question? I see your hand is up, and I don't know if that's from the first time or if you had an additional question for us.
No, that was from the first time, but thank you.
Oh, sure. Right. Any other questions before we move along to the next segment? Melissa?
Yeah, hi. Just a follow up on the second question related to the matching portion. If we're a 20% match, we need to provide all the documentation for that 20% or for the entire scope of the project that is potentially a lot more than 20% of a match?
It is for the entire scope of the project. That being said, we'll cover this in more detail with during the desk review portion. You won't be required to provide that documentation for each request that you submit. We will do periodic reviews, and those are circumstances where we will follow up with you and say, hey, here's the list that you're requesting for. Let's get that supporting documentation in and reviewed. So it'll be yes, as it stands right now, it's all of those project materials on a more infrequent basis. Won't be for every request.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, as Casey mentioned, our final segment of the training sessions do talk about desk reviews. And we will go into more depth about what that entails and what documentation, both for our money and for your matching cost share, we will be requesting when those desk reviews happen. So part of our efforts in streamlining the reimbursement process on a regular basis is that we're building in a desk review function to make sure at least a couple of points during your 3-year performance period, we have sort of double checked your records and made sure that you have all the supporting documentation you're currently, if you were a current grantee, you would be submitting that now, every time you draw or request money. But as we streamline the process, it will be periodic that you will be asked for that information, as Casey said. So just so folks know, we will go into more detail on what that entails at the desk review portion. And I believe that is the last session that we have for you folks. Any other questions before we move along? And there'll be another question and answer opportunity. So if something comes to you during the next session, we can grab that question at the next stop. So with that, Georgia, do you want to run your own slides, or would you like me to do that?
You're good to run them if you can. Thank you.
Sure
If
thing.
they're up and running, that would be great. Hi, everyone. My name's Georgia. I am a program specialist at NBRC. I am tasked with checking your quarterly and annual reports. I also work in the USDA realm, issuing reimbursements and working on closeouts and also their reporting as well. And I hope that I can give you another high-level overview of what you'll need to be doing quarterly and annually, reporting-wise. These are required. It looks like your grants start August 1st, which is in a little while, like a week. So from August 1st onward, you are going to be required to submit reports. And you can go to the next slide. The first report that you'll need to do is an SFPPR. It's a progress report. You're going to be submitting it in the GMS, and we're going to give you tutorials on how to do that when they're ready and available. You can also check in the GMS for your reporting date, start date. You'll be needing that date for submission. I'd suggest setting a calendar reminder for quarter end dates. The date, January 30th, April 30th, July 30th, and October 30th are the very last day that you could submit the report. You can submit the report anytime in that month. We love when you submit them early, whenever the quarter ends after December 31st or March 31st and so on, you could submit that report. And you would be submitting that through the GMS. So your first report is going to be quarter 4. It's going to cover August and September till the 30th, and you'll submit the report in the GMS somewhere in the month of October. And you'll need to stay compliant with these reports in order to receive reimbursements. So it's if you submit a reimbursement and we're missing a report, you're going to have to clear that hurdle before we can get you your reimbursement. So it's good to just get that calendar reminder in. You don't have to think about it. And for the next 3 years, it's already telling you to get in the GMS and do that report. And these slides will be available so that these dates are also in the grant agreement, a compliance manual rather, and you can refer back to them on our website. And the next slide is what the SFPPR looks like. The GMS is going to be very different, but it's going to contain all the information that's highlighted, and you'll have to just make sure you have that kind of information readily available. It's all very straightforward. All of the boxes except for 10 are going to be very much the same information, your grant ID, the organization, if this is your final report, the start date, which is August 1st, to the end date, making sure that the years are correct. And box number 7 is the end date of the quarter that I showed you in the previous slide. And this is a quarterly report. Some federal agencies do them differently. We are quarterly. You'll also have to submit this at closeout, regardless of where in the year you are. You might have just submitted one and you might just have to submit another one because that is your final. It'll cover a summary of the entire project. Box 10 is, I have on the next slide a little bit closer view so you can see what's in there. Again, you can go to our compliance manual and you can send us questions at admin@nbrc.gov. Your LDD should have lots of experience with this, and there'll be GMS tutorials. So if you go to the next slide, or yes, this little pop-up, number 10 is the information that we're really looking for. We want to see where you are in your grant cycle. And we want to see if you have received your notice proceed, and or if you're receiving and asking for reimbursements. Even if you're finding yourself in a halt, we still want to know why. And please describe what those things are. And we love when folks share with us news articles. Please share the link directly. A lot of times these articles are online, so just a copy and paste of the URL is great. And this will all be in the GMS. You will be putting that information in there. And yeah, I think that covers quarterly reports. The next report is 425. It's a federal financial report. It's due once a year. It covers the whole fiscal year of 10/1, October 1st to 9/30. So you won't be needing to report until technically your grant starts August 1st. So you would have 2 months within the fiscal year of this report. And you would submit also in the GMS. Probably most of you will not have had any financial activity, but some of you might. So this form will need to be filled out, and it's a very straightforward form. It looks a little complicated, but basically what we're asking is for your award amount, how much you have received from NBRC, already processed reimbursements, nothing pending. We only want to see processed ones where you get your award or your reimbursement has been processed. Please wait 8 to 10 days. That's what it will look like. Once you receive that email, it's considered processed, and you would report that number on this form. We're looking for how much of your award is left, simple subtraction, and we're looking for match and how much match you have spent and the difference of that number. So it's a very simple form made to be looking very complicated. You'll submit it through the GMS. These are not reimbursement requests. These are separate form and they're due annually. And in order to receive reimbursement requests, these forms need to be in the system. So we would also like to request that you put a calendar reminder in for this report somewhere in the month of October, that you submit this form, and that will help you stay compliant. And it will also look different in the GMS. This is not exactly what the form will look like, but there will be tutorial walkthroughs when they're available. If you could go to the next slide. I think I might have said all of these things. Our compliance manual is really helpful if you're interested in learning more. If you have questions, ask away.
Thank you, Georgia. So any questions regarding your quarterly and annual reporting requirements? It's a little funky with 2 rounds of funding, sort of, when we make awards, that your first report kind of isn't a full quarter or a full year. So it's a little different than our normal process. But that's part of our reason for putting this training on, even, or covering these topics in this session, even though we don't have all our GMS resources available. Just important for people to start thinking about what their requirements are. I think reimbursements are a little further down the line, as Casey alluded to, and I think I did as well. We've got a couple of steps to get to before you would be eligible to start drawing money on your project. But important that you understand those requirements. As you know, for some of you, you may be sort of assigned with that task. It may be others who are assigned with that task. We just really wanted to make sure people knew what their requirements were, and we will be updating our website with the resources as they're finalized. And behind the scenes, the team will also be updating some of our existing tutorials. So while all these changes are great in the grants management system, it does mean that some of our existing resources also need to be updated for you that are in the GMS versus our prior year grantees who are working outside of the GMS. So kind of trying to cover both buckets. So just open up to questions, and if not, I can move along to just a couple other reminders for people. All right, so Casey said we were going to give you some time back, and he was spot on. Just a reminder of the next 2 upcoming grantee training sessions. So the final 2 will be next week. Tuesday, we will be covering amendments, so project oversight, any type of changes to your project that may occur in our amendment process, and also our procurement process. And then we will wrap up next Thursday afternoon with our closeout desk reviews that we alluded to a little bit earlier, and NBRC's community visit initiative. And I think from there, other than thanking you for your time, just a couple of reminders for folks. We had a session on Monday for our NEPA, so your environmental review. Grantees are not, even though we had our environmental consultant present, grantees should be communicating on their projects with NBRC as it relates to anything project related. You should not be contacting the Clark Group, Austin, Rizzo, any of the members of the Clark Group team. They are contracted with NBRC. So it certainly understand people may have questions about environmental review requirements for their project, but those project related questions need to come through us at NBRC using that admin@nbrc.gov email address and noting your application number. And then just also that I think we mentioned during that training, but a good reminder if you were not on that, the review of your projects as it relates to NEPA is currently underway. So there is not any guidance we can give you in terms of is your project going to be a CADX or are you going to be required to do an environmental assessment? Until that review and determination is done, which is in process now, there really isn't any further guidance we can share with you as it relates to your project in satisfying NEPA, other than the resources of the training session from Monday and the existing resources we have on our website as it relates to NEPA in more detail. I've seen some correspondence from our consultant from some of you folks and just wanted to remind you that if that was not clear in the session earlier this week, just to make sure you know the communications on your project need to come through us here at NBRC. And then just a final reminder about making sure if you are required to submit some outstanding documentation that you make that a priority. As Georgia mentioned, we are trying to move these projects through obligating money and issuing grant agreements in order to get your performance period started. And so we want to make sure we do our part and also ask that you do yours in prioritizing items that we ask from you. And with that, I will open up for one final opportunity if there are any questions. All right, well, thanks again for your time. Glad we are able to give you back some time. I know I know our team is probably pretty excited about having a little bit of time back. But thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. And enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.